I'm a
Yeah.
licensed contractor, I'm a licensed lender, and a licensed
Mhm.
broker. My lane is $1 billion of lending on distressed housing with prime borrowers across 37 states. I have chosen to put all of my money in this fund. Other people have put their money in that fund. It's doing exceptionally well at 8.5 to 10%. But it's doing very well because I stay in the area that I focus in, which is
Yeah.
distressed housing lending to real estate investors.
Welcome back to the Massive Passive Cash Flow Podcast. I'm Gary Wilson, your host, and I'm glad you're back on the show. We love you participating and listening. We love it if you leave a review. We love your reviews. Your review is actually our currency. We don't get paid for this. It's a pleasure to serve the community, and indirectly we build relationships. So that works actually. But for you, we serve you. We give you great content, information, education, and even entertainment. And we got a great one today. Todd Pigott from Central Valley, California, one of my favorite places on the planet. And he's got a unique proposition and a business model that he uses to help investors who want to be investing in real estate, but really don't have the time to go visit the brick and mortar and deal with all the stuff that feet on the ground requires. So Todd, first off, man, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate your time and you sharing your valuable experience with us.
Gary, it's a pleasure. And I want to take a moment to thank you and your listeners for giving me the opportunity to be here today. It's absolutely a pleasure. And I hope I can add value to yourself as well as your listeners on this program.
You got it. I'm looking forward to it. And if you wouldn't mind, I always like to have people start off with a little bit of a story about themselves because I think if people understood how you got to where you are, they can place themselves in that vision. They can see it and see that it's real. You're a real, authentic, genuine person. And overnight successes usually are 10 or 20 years in the making. So if you wouldn't mind, take us back to how you when you really started thinking about this. So what was a pivotal moment, and what was that transition like getting into the current business? Mhm.
Yeah. So, today, Zinc, we've lent a billion and a fixed and flipped 100 million, but it didn't happen overnight. There is no get rich quick. I don't believe in any of that. My life started being born in Southern California. My father was vice president of Pacific Life Investments out of Newport Beach. I grew up about a few hundred yards down from Disneyland. My parents ended up in divorce, and I ended up very poor with my mother. We ended up on welfare many times, where the church
Mhm.
brought our Christmas gifts, and we didn't have utility payments. It was really a tough beginning. I played water polo in high school, and I enrolled at Fresno State for a degree in construction and finance. I'm kind of an outdoorsy
Mhm.
guy. I'm a hiker, I'm a mountain biker, and I'm a road biker, and I like construction. So I enrolled in the program. Unfortunately, I didn't have the money for tuition, so I withdrew. A couple of weeks goes by, and I got a call from the counselor. Said, "Why'd you withdraw?" And I said, "Listen, I don't have the money for the tuition or the books." They called back and they got me a scholarship for the first year that paid for my tuition and books. Again, I was broke. I had about $17 to my name. I had no checking. I had no savings. I had a
Mhm.
1972 Ford Courier pickup truck that backfired every time I shifted from third to fourth, and it needed a bunch of work. I sat in a
Mhm.
parking lot for 6 hours. Here I am at Fresno State. I'm trying to get a
Mhm.
degree. I have no money. I have no checking. I don't have any gas. I have $17.20 to my name. And so what happened is I re-enrolled in Fresno State and went back to class and was playing water polo. And water polo practice ended at 5, 6, or 7. And so I needed
Mhm.
to earn money that 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 I could kind of do on my own because the
Mhm.
ending time of practice was so different. So I took my $17 and I took my mom's vacuum and I started knocking on doors, and I wanted to clean their offices. And so my first client was $63. My second client was $63. Then I got another
Mhm.
client was $149, and then I got Spano Enterprises for $210. By my third month in business, I had $810 cleaning offices. I built that company up over 16 years, over 3 states, and 500 employees in facilities
Wow.
maintenance, interior janitorial, exterior
Mhm.
janitorial, street sweeping, parking lot sweeping, graffiti removal, and everything else. We did clients like Target and Albertsons and Mervyn's and Smart and Final and PetSmart. So I drew that company, but it was never really my enjoyment. I didn't like it at all. And so then I was in an auto accident with my kids. I ended up in trauma. And I decided at that point in my life, I wanted to do something that I enjoyed for the rest of my life and not my current occupation. I left that and I started Zinc. Zinc is a 17-year company. I
Mm-hmm.
did some rehabbing. I did rehabbing. I bought multifamily. I rehabilitated it. I fixed it up. I rent rolled it, and then I got into positive cash flow. And then I bought some commercial, and I rent rolled that up, and I started to do better in commercial. And then I bought a bunch of industrial buildings. I fixed those up. I fixed the signage. I fixed the landscaping. I fixed the roofing, painted the exterior, put in new windows, and I rent rolled that up. And then I started on single family houses, buying them. They're in distressed
Mm-hmm.
state. REOs, fire damage, water damage, whatever it might be. I started fixing those up and selling them. And then I had investors come along and say, man, you got a pretty good thing going. You buy these properties at a discount, you repair them up to conventional standards, you sell them, you make some money. We'd like to
Mm-hmm.
participate. So then I became a lender. I became a lender. Zinc Financial is a lender. It has the same licensing as Wells Fargo and Bank of America. We are a
Mm-hmm.
licensed lender. And so I started lending on distressed assets, helping real estate investors in their journey of buying
Mm-hmm.
properties, fixing them, repairing them, and then obviously selling them to earn a profit or rent rolling them up for their own portfolio. And so then as time goes along in my Zinc journey, I become a larger lender. And then I have more people coming to me to invest alongside with me. And so in the past 17 years, we have the Zinc Income Fund. And the Zinc Income Fund is our mortgage fund. It is our flagship fund that people can invest their money in, their IRA, their money. It is 100% secured with first position deeds of trust on the loans that we originate. And so that's kind of the short story of how we built this thing, starting from
Mm-hmm.
30 years ago with $17 in my pocket, building a company up to 500 employees, and then taking that's the sale from that company and rolling it into Zinc, which started as a fix and flip guy buying properties and rebuilding them. And then we rolled into the lender stage, and now we're a lender in 37 states that helps real estate investors with the liquidity necessary
Mm-hmm.
to buy those properties, fix them, and rehab them. Investors have been with me for 17 years. We've done a
Mm-hmm.
billion. I have less than 1/8 of 1% in losses, and so
Wow.
we have virtually
Yeah.
nothing in losses. It's about 0.2%, nothing. And so my investors are very, very happy because they get to participate in real estate investing without the
Mm-hmm.
hassle of real estate management. And so that's a good thing for them. Look, it's a win-win-win. I call it my quadruple win. Here's how this
Okay.
works. I have
Yeah.
investors in my fund. They get to
Mm-hmm.
win. How? They're investing in an exceptionally secure asset. They're in a first position loan position, and they're earning 8.5 to 10% on their money with
Mm-hmm.
favorable tax treatment. Favorable tax treatment. Only
Okay.
80% of the income is taxed at the federal level. So the investors in my fund win. They have excellent asset protection, investing in real estate passively and earning great returns. Then I've got Zinc. We win because we make a few bucks on the origination fee of the loans, and so that is also very, very good. Then I have our borrower. They win because they have access to the liquidity for a distressed property that they otherwise would not have. And so they
Mm-hmm.
win. And then finally, that first time home buyer and the neighborhood wins. That first time home buyer was able to purchase a rehabilitated property at a discount price, and they've got a nice new home, typically to a first time home buyer. And boy, the neighborhood wins. We took over that property that had weeds that were 2 feet tall, Christmas lights still hanging up in the middle of the summer, 3 broken windows, and a car engine in the front driveway. That's what you people
Okay.
had in that neighborhood. My borrower took that over, and they took down the Christmas lights in June, and they took the
Yeah.
engine out of the driveway, and they mowed the grass, and they painted it, and they fixed the stucco and the broken windows. They put in new cabinets, they put in new appliances. They now you now have the nicest house on that neighborhood, so the neighborhood's happy. They bring cook. It's so funny, man. They bring cookies. They're so happy. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
you're fixing up this house that's been bothering us for years. Yeah, we're fixing it up, and it's going to a first-time home buyer. And so I feel good because we made a few bucks on the origination fee, and we helped this neighborhood turn around, and we helped our borrower turn around. Our borrower is going to make 25, 30 grand on the deal, maybe 75 or 100, depending on the size of the property. So they win. And then, by the way, my investors in the fund, they win. You're helping improve this community. You're helping the borrower get access to those funds. And
Mm-hmm.
you yourself are an investor in real estate without all the hassle. You're going to earn 8.5 to 10% on a fund that's registered with the SEC in Washington, that is fully audited, has first position loans on these properties, It's really really neat that we have four channels of victories on this, and so I really like what I do. I'm very passionate about what I do. I don't want to own a restaurant. I don't want to own a bar, and I don't want to drive a truck for a living. I really like what I'm doing. I'm creating value for multiple parties, and it's really a neat experience.
Well, it sounds awesome, and I've seen things like this before, but this sounds pretty unique. So let's unpack this a little bit more. So you really got
Sure.
there's four players, and like from the if we take like a life cycle from the moment money investable dollars enters into the fund, then you got that you can go then buy a property with, and that property gets remodeled, then you sell it back on the market, and you actually become the lender for the end user, the typically first time home buyer. So take us through, if you could take us through a life cycle. Who are the parties involved? Like who's actually finding the properties that are bought to be remodeled? Who's dealing with the remodeler? If we can get to that kind of level, I know it may take a few minutes, but it'll help people gain some clarity, get a little more granular with it, so they can see the life cycle of this. Because I think you're going to appeal to a couple of groups of people here. you know. Did you know that you can participate in class every Monday? We call it Monday Night Live, 7 p.m. Eastern, with me and dozens of other investor agents from around the country, in fact, the world. Every Monday, totally free. No selling, no recruiting, just straight up education on anything and everything in real estate. And we have a lot of good guests coming on once or twice a month, bringing in expertise on subjects like how to buy a house with crypto. Okay. How about them apples? What about AI? How's AI affecting our business? How about the metaverse, blockchain processing? We're already using it in title work. So come on to Monday Night Live. Be ready to take notes and ask questions because it's live and engaging, and you get to participate by asking questions and meeting others. So we'll see you there. Go to GaryRealEstateWithGaryWilson.com. Click on the resource tab, drop down, and you'll see Monday Night Live. And in there, you can see one of the most recent classes. But more importantly, you can register for class as many as you want going up to like the end of the year, I believe. So in any case, do that. We'll see you on Monday Night Live. Look forward to meeting you in person. Take care.
Yeah. So it kind of starts like this. The first thing we have is we have typically high net worth individuals or people with IRA money or people with the capital. Our average investment's about 350,000 up to millions in our funds. So we have this group of people. They're very savvy. They're very smart. They also have capital. They're investing and they understand real estate. They don't understand Bitcoin. They don't understand some of these stocks that are out there, the valuations, which I don't either. I don't play in any of that. So number one, I've got a group of investors, high net worth people, doctors, attorneys, or whatever, and they have extra money. They understand real estate. They understand cash flow. They got it. They invest in the fund. They get a subscription agreement in our fund, and that they put their money in there. They wire it in. This fund is registered with the SEC. It is audited by Spiegel, the largest auditing firm in the country for mortgage funds. Then we have a compliance team up in Oregon called Verivest. They make sure the compliance is legitimate. So the first thing that happens is people invest in our fund. They are fully protected, fully secured by first position loans. Okay, so we have this bucket of money sitting in our fund in an SEC registered fund. Next, what happens is our phone rings. This is a real estate investor. He's a mom and pop investor. It's not a big company. This is a guy that does 4 or 5 deals a year. Their typical liquidity is they have $100,000 or $200,000. They're mom and pop investors. They do 4 a year or 3 a year. They got property. How'd they get it? They got this property at auction. They got this property through what's called a wholesaler. A wholesaler is somebody that goes out and finds distressed properties. Maybe they found it on the MLS. This property is moderately dilapidated. This property has good bones. It has good foundation. It has good walls, and it's in a desirable location. I call it my curbs and gutter theory. So this real estate investor comes to us, and our underwriting is very strict, very strict. Our loan files are 3.5 inches thick. Why? I have my own money in the fund. I guarantee my investors with a $500,000 cash posting, which I have. And so I'm
Okay.
very careful. I'm very careful because this is my money. I am 100% invested in this. I don't have stocks. I don't have an IRA. I don't have other things. I have all my money in here. So I'm very careful. I have a cash alignment with my investors in that fund. I'm fully vested. My dad's in it. My uncles are in it. My friends and family, my pastor of my church is in this. All right.
Hmm.
And so I am very careful. So we have this fund. Then we have the borrower. The borrower got the property at auction, wholesale. It's got good bones. We
Hmm.
evaluate every single property. It's got a curb, it's got a gutter, it's got a street. It's in a metropolitan area. There are neighbors around. It is not a cabin. It is not in the middle of the desert. It is not some junkie infested gang house in some
Right.
downtown area. This is a property that's in severe distressed condition, but it's got good bones and it's in a
Hmm.
good neighborhood. There is a Starbucks nearby, which we track. There is a McDonald's nearby. There's a Costco. But this property is not habitable. It can't get conventional financing by the federal government, which is required.
Hmm.
It must have a smoke alarm. It must have self-closing windows. It must have a GFI at the kitchen or in the bathroom
Hmm.
outlet. All these things must be done. And before FHA or Fannie will do a loan, all these things have to be fixed. But this property can't be fixed. It's it was a drug house. It was squatters. It was renters. They put holes in the walls, it's graffiti, whatever. Again, it's a bad thing. So this borrower gets this property through a wholesaler or auction or a couple of other means.
Okay.
They cannot get a bank to lend on it. They can't. Why? Banks, for the most part, are prohibited from lending on distressed properties because they get their money from the FDIC. And so banks, conventional financing spectrums aren't good at this because they can't. If you get your money from the federal government, like banks and credit unions do, you're typically
Hmm.
prohibited from loaning on properties that don't meet conventional standards. So, how do you
Yeah.
buy that property? How does that borrower buy that property? We have two choices: cash, which is hard because they only have 100 or 200 grand, or get a loan from a private lender like Zinc. See, we're not FDIC and backed. We're backed by our fund and investors in
Okay.
the fund. So I can loan on that distressed property. So here I have this borrower. He's got a 710 FICO. That's our average FICO, 710 FICO. He's got 100 or 200 grand. He's got a good exposure to the business. And he buys this property, comes to us and says, hey, Zinc, I need a loan for 9 months, a transitional loan. Yes, this is
Hmm.
no problem. So we put them through processing and underwriting, and we get an appraisal. That appraisal tells us what the after repaired value is going to be. It tells us what the as is value is going to be. It tells us what the other comps are like in the area. We do super due diligence. We go back to the borrower and says, look, it all maps out. This house is going to be worth $400,000. You
Hmm.
got it for $275,000. By the way, you bought the cheapest house in the neighborhood in 2 years because it's a dump. So we're
Yeah.
super protected. We're super protected because you bought this house that's 275. That borrower has a 710 FICO and he's going to put down 20%. He's going to put down 50 or 60 grand. And now I'm
Yeah.
into this house 210 that's going to be worth 400. So I'm really well protected. So I have this borrower that comes to me and says, listen, man, I need this loan for this property. Some renters destroyed it. The air conditioner's gone. They stripped the wires, broken windows, and the cabinet doors are all missing. No problem.
Hmm.
You got it for 275. It's going to be worth 400. The appraiser's been to it. You're going to put down 20% with your 710 FICO. We're going to loan you the rest. We're going to give you a 9-month loan. And so we charge that borrower about 1.5% origination fee. So
Hmm.
on that 200 grand we gave him, Zinc itself might make, a couple thousand on an origination fee. And then we fund that loan with our fund. We fund that loan. And so 200,000 is the loan. My investor is going to realize a cash flow immediately, day one cash flow of 8.5 to 10%. Because
Hmm.
that investor is paying 10.5 to 11%. That's a lot of money. It is and it isn't. He's buying that
Hmm.
property that he's going to make $30,000 on in less than 9 months. He doesn't care if he's paying 10.5 or 11% to us. He just needs the money. And so he's
Right.
buying that prime FICO borrower. He says, I don't care if it's 10.5 or 11. I'm buying this property. I'm going to fix it up. I'm going to sell it. I'll make 35 grand. And I don't care if it's 10.5% or 11. My interest is more, can it be funded quickly? And so that borrower is happy to pay 10.5 and 11. We're happy to charge him 1.5% on the front end. And my investors in the
Hmm.
fund are like, God, this is a great deal. You bought that house for 275.
Yeah.
We're loaning 200. The thing's going to be worth 400. We're well protected. And by the way, you get to just sit at home in your recliner and watch TV. Well, this money is working for you at 8.5 to 10% because he's doing the work. We're just lending the money. We're in
Yeah.
a great position, man. We have a first position loan, first position lien on that collateral backed by an Alta insurance policy. So we're in great shape. So then the borrower finishes that property in 8 months and it's all beautiful. They've mowed the front yard. They've painted it. They
Mhm.
replaced the broken windows. They fixed the air conditioning unit. They repatched all the walls. They added new baseboards on the inside. They took down all the lighting that was 12 years old, put up new dome lights from Home Depot. They're $14.97 a piece. You put in some new cabinets. You put in some granite. A double stainless steel sink from Home Depot is $98. And then you put in some clean steel appliances, which are fake stainless steel, but they look great. And so you turn this property into a really nice entry level home. Now you list it,
Mhm.
usually multiple offers. Why? This is a beautiful home now that 9 months ago looked like a dump. And so the neighbors are super excited because they're watching, seeing all this happen, and all the car parts are now out of the driveway, and the fence that was leaning over is now fixed. And instead of this house being painted purple, it's now being painted a nice beige. and so and so he lists it and then it sells it. And then the first time home buyer comes along and says, man, the comps in this neighborhood are 400. I can buy this house for 400 with 3.5% down through FHA. Yes, you can. Isn't it beautiful? I love it. It's got new cabinets and it's got new granite counters and it's got new double stainless steel sink and appliances and new finished lighting and new flooring and new baseboards, and the yards look great. And so they buy it for 400 with 3.5% down from FHA. Then that loan closes and funds through title and escrow. Our borrower made 35 grand because he's only into it 325. We get paid off. That money goes directly back into the fund and then it's recycled again. So our investor and the fund as well, earning 8.5 to 10%, fully secured by a first position lien on that property with a prime borrower that put down 20%. And by the way, we're
Wow.
lending at the lowest price point of that neighborhood. My borrower did well. He made $35,000 in 9 months by fixing up that property. My first time home buyer, I've had people call the office. I've had people come by the office
Yeah.
crying. They were able to get into a new home in the neighborhood that they otherwise would not have been able to afford. And so they can't afford the new house, but they got a nice new rehabbed house in an existing neighborhood that's been
Mhm.
repositioned for them. And so they're happy. They're in tears. And by the way, the neighbors, and I'm not kidding, love us. They love it. We sometimes we stick a sign out in front. This house is being remodeled by Zinc or whatever. They're like, "What's going on here?" We've hated that house for years. The renters would
Yeah.
always stay up till 2 in the morning. They were always throwing trash in the front yard. They always had all these people over parking everywhere, and the Christmas lights are up in June, and la 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 la. And we're like, you're welcome. We're fixing up the neighborhood, so the neighborhood's happy. That first time home buyers are ecstatic because they bought a house that they otherwise could not afford. They couldn't afford a new home, but they got a nice new
Yeah.
rehabbed home. And that borrower of ours made 35 grand. They're tickled pink. I'm happy because everything's working, and my investors are really, really happy because in 17 years, we've lost less than 1/8 of 1%, negligible. The 8.5 to 10% is extremely lucrative with protection of principal. Protection of principal is the key. That is absolutely paramount. I don't participate in other investments because I don't understand them. And honestly, I think they're too risky. I'm at a point in my life, I've got 3 kids and a wife, and I want to protect my money, and I'm in it with them. And so the best protection of principal, I'll tell you, in this country is a first position lien on a piece of residential property that can be sold or rented. It's an excellent investment. But for people who don't want to buy their own properties and deal with the broken toilet or deal with the renter or deal with maintenance or deal with repairs, our fund is an excellent opportunity for people to invest in that, carefree, earn eight and a
Mhm.
half to 10%, and know that their money is protected by the nation's largest auditor and the SEC. And so I think that's just a really powerful, system that we've put together that candidly has worked very, very well.
Yeah. Um, so now, is there ever a reason, or is it a possibility for the end user, once a house is remodeled and that an investor, the flipper flips it, that you could even finance the end user buyer, or is that not part of the equation? The investor gets the money they need to remodel, they pay it back when they sell the house. The source investor, I call this the fund, the source of the funds, they're getting pretty much, I guess, as close to guaranteed rate as you can get. They're getting 8.5%. So then your company that's spread in between, your Zinc gets that for its services. Um, so I think I've got that figured out. But is there ever a reason, or is it possible to finance the end user too? I mean, they can't say they can't qualify, but for all intents and purposes, they're a good risk. Is that ever part of that, or?
And so that's a great question. Would we finance that entry level home buyer? And Zinc is a licensed lender. Again, we have the same licensing as Wells Fargo major banks. We're watched the same. The only difference is we get our money from the private source and not a FDIC source. We do
Yeah,
not finance. We do not finance the consumer. Why? Um, that's a consumer loan. That's a
yeah,
consumer loan, and that's not something that we're known for or specialize in. And so we just specialize in what we're very, very good at, and I stay in my lane. I'm a
yeah,
licensed contractor. I'm a licensed lender and a licensed
mhm,
broker. My lane is $1 billion of lending on distressed housing with prime borrowers across 37 states. So when people
yeah,
ask me, like, why don't you get into consumer lending? Why don't you get into industrial, commercial, agriculture? I know other lenders in my space that start broadening their horizon, and you can't know it well. I have chosen to put all of my money in this fund. Other people have put their money in that fund. It's doing exceptionally well at 8.5 to 10%. But it's doing very well because I stay in the area that I focus in, which is
yeah,
distressed housing lending to real estate investors. And so, in my 30 years of career and multiple things I've done, I've learned, let me be an expert at one or two things, not a non-expert in eight things. So we do not loan
right,
money on consumer lending because I just don't think that's something I want to learn and be expert at. I don't do agriculture. I don't do car washes. I don't do funeral homes. I do one
yeah,
thing, and I do it because I have my money invested in this, my friends and family's money invested in this, and I don't want any problems because of the exit strategy.
yeah.
So we just stay with what we know very, very well, and we don't deviate from that. So we do not do consumer lending.
Well, what's really cool about your model then is, years ago I used to work for a large national bank. If I named it, everybody would know who it is. But I did mergers and acquisitions. And what's interesting, we had a lending division, and whenever an investor invests money, the things we're looking for is how much am I going to make? What's my rate of return? And how soon am I going to get it? So the way you're doing it, your risk is reduced because the length of time your money's out there. In other words, the flipper has your money in their possession is limited. I mean, it could be 3 months, could be 6 months, could be a year on a nice big giant project. But the reality is they're paying a higher rate of return than they would normally pay a traditional conventional bank. So you've got enough coming in to make money, but also pay the back end, the source investor. And because of the short duration of the loan, the risk is dramatically reduced. To me, that's the perfect scenario. When you
I
lend money for 30 years, that's a lot of risk.
So listen, man. I learned that I have navigated four recessions in my lifetime. Four. I've
Yeah.
navigated four. When I designed this platform for this reason, our loans turn on an average of 7.5 months. One of the first
Wow.
questions an investor will ask me is, "How is my money protected? What happens if the market declines?" And I say
Hmm.
this: we bought that property at the lowest price point in that neighborhood. That borrower put down 20%. We're
Hmm.
at the lowest lien point in that neighborhood. And we're only in this property for an average of 7.5 months, maybe a year.
Yeah.
This guy bought at the lowest price point and put down 20%. We're in this
Yeah.
thing an average of 59.6%. Our fund is in currently positioned at 59.6 of the value
Mm.
of its assets. So
Yeah.
if the market turns, it would have to turn on a calamity to penetrate
Oh
down
yeah.
40%. We are turning our properties or loans rather every 12 months. That's one of the reasons I'm so comfortable in what I do. We're only in these for 7.5 months to maybe a year. So no matter where you're at in the real estate cycle, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because we're out of them so quick and we're refreshing our valuations so quick that for it to be colossal, it would have to be a calamity of magnitude across the
Oh
country or
yeah,
the world. It would have to be something really, another a war, terror attack. Something would
Venezuela.
have to, yeah, something,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Something would have to devastate our financial system to cause the properties to drop 35% in a period of 8 or 9 months. So
yeah,
that is just extremely
yeah,
unlikely. We're at 59.6, and our inventory, our loan inventory, is refreshed so frequently that I don't get too concerned about market fluctuations because I'm only in that thing for 8 months. No matter where you're at on the bell curve, it's
yeah,
happening so fast, that it's we're in a very safe position, very because we're refreshing, and you
yeah,
picked up on that, and I think that's very important.
yeah.
The
Well, I tell
last
you what,
place you want
I
to the last place you want to be
mhm,
is the federal government doing
right.
97.5% on that property at retail value. Talk
Oh
about
yeah,
risky. Talk about
yeah,
risky. That's the risk. They
yeah,
they they bought that at 400. My borrower was into it 225, and so
yeah,
they gave that borrower 97.5% of that 400. I mean, if the market dips at all in 30 years,
yeah,
3.5%, that borrower was already underwater, and we never were. We never were because we cried 20% down, and you bought it
yeah,
at a cheap price. So the risk is not on us. We
right.
get paid 10.5% for very limited risk. The FHA is doing 6% at 97% on the dollar. Where do you want to be? We want to be in the,
Right.
I want to be at making 10.5% on a 59% loan to value. That's where I want to
Yeah.
be. I don't want to be making 6% on a 97.5% loan to value. So uh, we've mitigated that
Exactly.
risk substantially. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I know we're probably out of time here, but any final thoughts on those? So you're in 40 states, and that's really good. I mean, I have a team. We run a team of agents called the Global Investor Agent Team, and we work with investors. And it's not a brokerage; it's a team, and we're in 38 states. And I mean, I would love to stay connected to you because I think we can, do some business together. We haven't, we do flips all the way up to big apartment complexes and land development and everything. But really, it's the bread and butter homes that where most of the business is done. But as far as
Us
like
too. Us too.
yeah, yeah, that's it. I mean,
I,
you
I, I
go,
call it I call it flipping McDonald's hamburgers. It's very
yeah,
boring. It's 3 bedroom, 2 bath homes. It's a McDonald's hamburger. We're
yeah,
just doing the same McDonald's hamburger every single day across the country. And so I like
yeah,
McDonald's hamburgers because they're very simple. It's easy to
yeah,
understand. You got to flip a lot of them to make a nickel, but it's a
yeah,
very simple commodity that everybody understands. And so I kind of stay in the SFR, single family residence space. That's just kind of where
yeah,
we go. I understand it, and that's safety. Back to safety.
yeah. Well, I also like your model. It's uh the you know the potential, the front end potential, the growth potential. You know, I guess what I call the reward potential is really up there, and yet the risk portion is very low. So you've got a wide range of a big the big gap between risk and reward. You've got low risk and high reward. I guess is what I'm trying to say in few words, but it
We,
also it works in a market. If the market changes, you're still going to be okay. You know, you might have a lower volume of transactions. Of course, you might have a higher volume because there'll be more properties going on the market. So
we have this country across this country, and we track a lot of these metrics. We track them. We get our
mhm,
data directly from the GSA, Government Services
right,
Administration, not the internet. We have a
mhm,
magnificent shortage of housing uniformly across the country. A massive
yeah,
shortage of housing. There is a super need for entry level housing almost in every single market. And so,
yeah,
if the market dips a little bit, 2 or 3% year over year, well, no problem here. I mean, you would have to dip 30% year over year for us to really be harmed. And so we have the
yeah,
perfect adjustment of risk and reward. I today think it's very dangerous to be in stocks that are trading at high multiples
oh
on
yeah,
on a company that's not even making money on an
Yep.
asset that you are seventh in line. Let me clear, seventh in line to get paid back on. You own stock. You don't own anything. You own
Yep.
a piece of paper that says you own a piece of this company, and you're not secured at all. And
Yep.
you don't really even know what that company does, except somebody told you to buy it and they think it's going to go up in value. That's all you know. And so I just
Yeah.
don't like those things. I can't touch it. I can't feel it. I don't even know what they do. I don't even know if they're making money. Um, and
Yep.
don't even get me started on the electronic currency thing, because I really don't understand that. But I understand houses, and so I
Yeah.
understand houses. And so with that, that's why so many of my investors come to me. We understand houses. We understand they can be rented, they can be sold. We're at a good
Yep.
LTV position with good interest rate, with a good borrower with 710 FICO that put down 20%. I don't think it gets any better than that. And so
Right.
that's why this model is what I consider successful, and which is why I put all my money into it, because I'd rather have that. You know, Gary, if the
Yeah.
world ends tomorrow, I'd rather be stuck with houses than worthless
Yep.
stock that went down 97% or 75%. I,
Yep.
I like houses. I
Yeah.
understand it.
Yeah. The
My
beautiful
investors
thing
ask,
about yeah, the beautiful thing about real estate is it never goes to zero. Real
it
estate
never
never
goes to
goes to
zero.
zero.
It
Yep.
never goes
Nope.
to zero. And
Yep.
entry level housing is very, very needed. I can always find a renter. My investor goes,
Yep.
what happens if the whole world ends? And well, then I got a bunch of rentals. You and I will be in
Yep.
our pickup truck. We're going to go rent these, because there's
Yep.
there's there's an everybody needs shelter, so I can go rent that 3 bedroom, 2 bath. I mean, in a real true calamity,
Yep.
the stock market crashes. My borrower can't sell the property. No problem. We move through foreclosure. It takes about 90 days. We get possession. We get title. Rent it out, and that's our true backstop. Is we hold that property and rent it out. Been doing this for 17 years. It's happened very, very infrequently. Um, we only have about a
Yep.
1% take back rate, so that track record's very strong. So,
Yeah.
but that is the backstop. Yeah, you're right. It's not going to go to zero. So,
Yeah. Well, I like the fact that you got your own money into it too. And by the way, so Todd, how can people get a hold of you? Is there a website they can go visit? A special report, chapter in the book. What's the best way for people to reach out to you? I mean, because you got borrowers who want to reach out to you, and you're going to have investors who want to reach out to you.
Gary, thank you for that. Thank you. Absolutely. I'm going to give you two websites and then our phone number. So,
Okay.
so for investors who are looking to create wealth passively of 8.5 to 10% with a 20% tax deduction on the federal side. So for investors out there, usually typically high net worth individuals, go, yeah, I want to make 8.5, 10%, but fully secured. I like that model. I would
Mhm.
invite them to zincinvesting.com. Zinc, zinc, Z as in zebra, I, igloo, N as in Nancy, C as in cat, investing.com. Zincinvesting.com is the
Mhm.
website for our mortgage fund, and David Sheets is our director of investor relations. And so for investors who want to earn that type of passive income, it starts immediately. You're not waiting years. You're not going to wait till we reposition the property. Blah, blah, blah. You put money in, you get an ACH less than 30 days. ACH. So
Mhm.
zincinvesting.com for people that want to invest in a fund. For borrowers out there, for borrowers who wish to borrow money from us to fix up that property and make a few bucks, for those fixer and flippers out there, zincfinancial.com.
Okay.
Zincfinancial.com is our borrower website. Zincfinancial.com is our borrower website. Our investor for the fund is zincinvesting.com. Finally, they can
Yep.
reach us here at the office at 559-326-2509. Again, that's 559-326-2509.
Mhm. Okay. Good. Well, Todd, I really appreciate you doing this, man. I know we went a little bit long, but it was such a good podcast, and you gave a lot of really good details. I mean, granular, so now everybody knows exactly what it's all about. They can see the reward, and the tremendous reward potential, right? Upside potential and a dramatic lower risk side. So, I mean, this is what people look for, and you got that kind of a spread. That's pretty amazing. So, but I also appreciate you taking your time. I know you're a busy guy, And I know how lucky we are to have you on board. And for all the listeners, thank you for listening. And remember, please leave a review. We love your reviews. It just takes a moment to do it, but it's what helps the podcast world go around. And we get the do more for more people, the more reviews we get. It's just the way the algorithms work. And we always try to bring great guests like Todd on. So God bless you and your families, Todd, everybody, the listeners. And we will see you on the next Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cash Flow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.